Hi everybody, in the previous video, we looked at components and some of the cooler things you can do that goes beyond the basics. And one of the big things we looked at was this thing known as props or properties. Now, the thing about props is that they're the primary way you actually communicate data in your React application. So they're kind of a big deal. In this video, we're going to spend some more time looking at them and more importantly, how to transfer them throughout your application. So let's get started. So ignoring for a moment JSX and all the various things that make up your app, let's look at our application hierarchy in terms of circles. You have a red circle and you have another component that relies on it, a yellow circle, which in turn has more components that rely on it, in the various layers as we go below it. Now, here's the situation. Let's say you want to transfer a property from your root, let's say your React DOM.render, and transfer it all the way down to your purple component at the very bottom, several layers below where you started from. Now, in a perfect ideal world, you could just imagine you have a property you define at the root, and then you have a magical way of being able to have your child components have it referenced directly. So you can see right here, we just have an arrow that goes straight to it, and your components are just fine. Now, that would be great, right? Well, as it turns out, you can't do that. In React, you have a very strict rule on how properties have to flow from a parent component to an immediate child component. This means you can't skip a layer of children when setting a property. This means your children can't send a property back up to a parent as well. All communication is one way from the parent to the child. Yeah, but you didn't know that, right? So that kind of makes it a little bit more complicated. Throws a few wrenches into our perfect plan of having this amazing communication system between parent and child. So here's what you have to do. In this case, you have to transfer your property from your parent into an immediate child, then back another layer of children, and another layer of children. That's a lot of transferring things, a lot of indirection going on. And unfortunately, there's really no way around it. So here's a more realistic, example. You have color equals purple, which is a prop we're defining called color, and the value is purple. And the second layer, the way you transfer that is when you're calling, let's say in this case, the green and blue components, you have color equals, and then you just transfer this at props.color from one layer to another, and you can see that keeps repeating over and over again. So for one single prop, it doesn't look too bad. It just seems like a slightly unnecessary, slight irritation, but that's okay. Now let's say we have two properties that we want to transfer over. In this case, we have color and size. And now we have to do the same exact work, except we duplicate it for both props. Now, at this point, you can sort of see the problem here. For every single prop we want to transfer, we're going to be copying and pasting a lot of things. And let's say you want to rename a value or modify some part of your prop. At that point, you need to go down through your entire component hierarchy and make that modification one more time. That's not fun, and it's also very error prone. It's actually a source of many problems, especially when I was learning React. I made a lot of many mistakes around renaming things and misspelling words and all of that. So, let's look at an example. So the example I'm going to look at is, I've made it a little bit more realistic. You have a React.render at your root, and you have three components, all just linearly calling one another. You have a shirt, label, and display. Now, slides are great, but let's get some code itself. So I have a very simple example. It just prints three values to the screen: steel blue, 3.14, and medium. And the details of how this app are structured are nothing crazy. You've seen this exact same markup and exact same CSS styling in previous examples. Just make sure that we have the appropriate React libraries and the Babel already there. You should be already set with that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Instead, let's focus on our application. So I have React.render, and I'm calling from it a shirt component. And I'm passing in three props. You can see color, you can see num, you can see size. And if we look at the shirt component, nothing crazy going on here either. I just have, in this case, I'm calling a label component from inside it, and I'm passing in the same exact props: color, num, size. And the value is not something I've actually expanded. I'm just passing the prop as is. So this.props.color, props.num, props.size. And this is repeating again for the display property, display component, where I'm calling it with the same exact value. So you can see I'm just transferring this prop from my shirt component up to label, up to shirt, and then shirt's calling the label prop component, and then from label you finally have the display component, which is actually using these values as part of displaying it on the screen. So you can see there's a lot of copy and pasting of props from one component to another, kind of what we saw in the visual earlier, but this you can actually see in actual code that is actually doing something. So what we don't want to do is actually copy and paste a lot of code, especially if you're going to be making changes that will break your application. So there is one solution for this, and that has to do with the ES6 spread operator. So I'm not going into great detail about ES6 features or spread operator and all of that, but I will focus on the one part of this feature that solves our immediate problem. So let's give an example here. We have an array called items, and we want to print the value of the array onto our screen. So I have a function called print stuff. It takes 3 arguments, and it kind of maps to the 3 items in our array. And I'm having console.log, and then I'm printing these values in the most basic way possible. Now, the way you would do this is by calling print stuff and calling each item individually. But imagine you had a much easier way of doing this. Let's say that you had a way of actually expanding these items automatically. That automatic approach is a spread operator. So notice what I have done here. I'm calling print stuff, and I'm actually specifying the values of my array by using this dot 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 operator. So dot 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 items is the equivalent of me calling print stuff and going items bracket 1, items bracket 0. So this is the approach I've done originally. Items bracket 0, items 1, items 2. This is actually pretty error prone, and if you wanted to add more items and all of that, you had to do extra work. Now, with this approach with the spread operator, you're safe. You don't have to do any of that. It automatically gets taken care of for you. And the thing about spread operator is this. It allows you to unwrap an array into its individual elements. And I'm using the word array, but it doesn't have to be an array. It could be a variety of collections, like even objects, which is an important part you'll see in a moment. So the spread operator, like I mentioned earlier, does a few more things as well, but that's not important for now. I'm not going to focus on that. Just remember that it allows you to unwrap the contents of something, a collection of items, into its individual things without you having to specify what those individual things actually look like. So the reason why that's important is if we talked about props as, as if it's this mythical thing that we have to use as is, but behind the scenes it's nothing fancy. It's just an object with the various properties that make up the data you're sending back and forth. So for our shirts example, our props is an object. You have 3 properties inside it: color, num, and size, with a value in it. And you can see that this is very similar to the items array we had before. So imagine what our solution might look like using the spread operator, because our spread operator also works on objects. So now that we've seen that, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can modify our code to be a little bit better at dealing with all of these props we're sending over. So I'm going to go back into Atom, and where I have label, color, this set, prop set, color, this stuff is fine. The first time we're defining everything, we have to actually specify the props in the order or in the location we want to transfer them into. Something can be done there. But here, we're the first consumer of all these props in a label component. I'm not going to transfer everything in color, num, and size. Instead, I'm going to rely on a spread operator to do this for us. I'm going to do bracket, delete all of this, dot dot dot, this dot, props. That's it. And so once I've done that, notice that in a few moments we'll see our example coming back again, and you see that same content, steel blue 3.14 medium, is getting displayed. And because I'm not modifying the props thing, I'm just purely transferring them from one location to another, I'm just going to, I actually had jumped locations, sorry about that, but you can see the point. I'm going to go back here and do the same exact thing. Delete content, dot dot dot, this dot, props. The important part to notice is that it doesn't matter where in the chain you're actually making this optimization. You can start from the like a more of a leaf node like I did earlier, or you can just start from immediately from the first point of contact, which is the right way of doing it. But the end result is I'm defining my shirt color information, and then I quickly change from that to this at props, and this is how I'm transferring values up and down the tree. Now here's the important part about this. Let's say I want to add another property to my example. So I have color, steel blue, num, size. Let me just call this one my ID, and let's give it a name. Let's give it a name of unique to represent a unique value. And so once I've done this, I made all these changes. Now, in the old traditional approach where you're transferring every single prop individually, I'd have to go in and actually make sure that I define the myID prop and then set its value to the evaluation of the bracket this.props.myid. But by using the spread operator, all that stuff is kind of taken care of automatically for you. All I have to do is just go all the way up here and just use it like I would any other prop, knowing full well that it's been transferred over as is. So just at props.myid bracket, and then let me close the value, and now you'll see if everything works out properly. You'll see unique being displayed right there. Now the formatting is a little off, but that's okay. We're not here to learn more about that. So there you have it, a very quick overview of how you can transfer props from one point of your application to another without having to do all this copying and pasting, thing that you would normally have had to do in a world where ES6 was not available. And that's because of spread operator, which makes it very easy for you to just define your props at the very beginning and then expand them out at the very end when you're actually using them. But in the long chain of components in between that might exist, you can just use the ... syntax to never have to expand those props ever again. So that's kind of cool. So with that, if you have any questions, post in the forums at forum.kurupt.com. And if you like this video, or if you didn't like this video, or you were kind of lukewarm about this video, tell your friends and enemies, hit subscribe to be notified of more videos that come out, and follow me on Kurupt on Twitter to get bite-sized updates on React-related things, cat videos, just anything that might be interesting or might even be boring, but it's only 140 characters, so I'm sure it's okay. And buy my book, Learning React. It's available on Amazon and physical bookstores everywhere, maybe. So check it out in paperback and Kindle editions. All right, guys, I'll see you all next time.